Hello and welcome to tonight's stream about Mindscaping. Doing a quick check. Yes, I'm live on YouTube. Okay, it appears to be working. Hi guys, let's see if we have anybody here at this point. I see Better with Bacon is around and Big Bad RPG, welcome. Thank you for showing up. Very kind. To see familiar faces. Nicholas Carmago, thank you for showing. You guys let me know if you can hear my voice audibly and if it sounds okay. I got a bunch of filters on, and the last time I used them, it sounded bad. My friends were not very happy in the last game we played. It worked out, but yeah. Now I'm being a bit self-conscious about it. I hope it works. So, I have a little bit of a setup, and we're gonna go into it. And at the end of it, I will look at some viewer questions to talk about and interact with you guys. To put my mind out there, what I think about Mindscaping. So we got a bit of a setup here, and we can start with that now. Oh, and after we talk about Mindscaping, I'm planning to do a Mindscape exercise with you guys here live, where I look at pictures and try to bring into words what I see and train the Mindscaping muscle. Okay, but that's for later. So let's switch over to what we have here. Perfect. Yeah, this looks good. This looks good. Sounds good. I can hear you. Beautiful. Mindscaping. It's pretty simple. Share your mind. Yeah, I felt proud about that tagline, not gonna lie. So how do I click here and there we go. So let's talk about what Mindscaping is, and the first slide I take directly out of Sean Driscoll's book, Roleplay, How to Roleplay the Hard Way, which is for free, online drive-through RPG. Look up Roleplay the Hard Way, you will find this book. You can get it without having to pay anything. Mindscape, an imagined surrounding. That's pretty much what it is. What you can imagine of what your surroundings look like is Mindscaping. Typically described in words and sometimes supported with pictures and prompts. Now, that is something we often use on our 4D role-playing tables, is having pictures ready for an environment that is a bit complicated, or that is part of the story that the players will travel through. And prompts can also help with the mindscaping. If you have a physical object, even if you put a hat on when you speak in character, it helps. That also can help the player to imagine, oh yeah, that's the guy with the top hat, and it helps their imagination of their surroundings. It's an exercise of your imagination. So what I believe about mindscaping, right? And that exercise is a skill. You, whenever you do it, you train the muscle, so to say. You can exercise it, or you can leave your mindscaping pretty bare bones and not do it. There are many role-playing tables where you can sit down and nobody does any mindscaping. It's oftentimes it can happen that you talk about what classes you are and how many hit dice you roll, and questions about if the door is locked or if the door is trapped, if they see something in the room like a rug, and if they can look under the rug. All of those elements that can be solved with mindscaping, with developing how much you um, I'm tripping over my words, with with mindscaping, about describing the room and giving it detail, and for the players to get a clear image to imagine it, what kind of environment they're in. And the last point, it's a library of your mind's eye, in a way. You fill it up with your experiences in real life, of the situations you're in. You might even describe a room that was basically where you slept in as a child, and you can have a vivid imagination what that looks like, which makes it easily translatable in a role-playing game, because they don't need to know where the room comes from. You just draw from your library, right? From whatever you have stored up in your mind to create a nice surrounding for the characters to be planted inside. And it can be through media as well, if you're through reading books of the descriptions of the writer, which translates very well for a role-playing table. The writer has had like hours sometimes to think about how to describe one singular scene, and you can just take that he spent 10 hours describing the scene. Now it takes for you only 20 seconds to do it at the same table. The rough part is if it's a good fit for the moment, but you can discard them if you feel like it didn't fit that well, and then better for next time. Books, but also movies, the visual medium of seeing it played out in action, to realize what kind of feeling you want to evoke. One of them would be two swashbuckling pirates on top of the what's it called, the railing, on top of the mast, where the sails are set from, standing on top, balancing precariously as they duel to the death with their scimitars, right? That is a short description, and like, oh yeah, that I can totally see that from a movie. I am thinking Pirates of the Caribbean immediately. That's the kind of action I'm going for, what kind of feel I want to evoke. And also you can draw from video games, which many more people nowadays play video games than they watch movies. Well, when we talk about watching movies in the cinema, of course, YouTube is very popular as well. But any media can be an inspiration, can help you to create to build up a library of events, of sceneries. I would also add in there that anime can be one such a place. One of an anime I've watched recently is known as Dungeon Meshi, where it's about this big dungeon with its own enclosed ecosystem, where adventurers have learned how to harvest the monsters and the plants to cook them into tasty dishes, because the adventuring rations does not last long enough to reach deeper into the dungeons. Eventually, they will rot and go bad. And that is one source of inspiration for myself. And when I watch that anime, it brings back a desire in myself to run a cool multi-level dungeon. And how would I describe such a place to my players? with my words that activates their imagination, that makes them really feel that sense of wonder. All right. Misunderstood. What is Mindscaping not? Mindscaping is very misunderstood. It's misunderstood as acting. That, oh yes, I am putting on a voice. I'm putting on a performance. I'm putting on, like, oh, I must have all of these things ready. It's not acting. It's not. Acting is what you do when you rehearse something. It actually bleeds nicely well into the next point. Mindscaping is not reading block text from a book. Now, block text can help, right? So, the block text being what is written down in a role playing game when they enter a specific room in a dungeon that turns out it used to be a temple of Idun or something like that. And so it has a description of a goddess statue standing there. And the ceiling has a nice painting, a Michelangelo painting up there. And you have this nice block text. But the block text is not directly mindscaping. To be more precise, it can be mindscaping, but the important part is describing what the characters see from the character's point of view. And with a block text, they are often written in a way that you can just tell it to your players so that the players understand what they see. But oftentimes, one of the block text sins is they describe details the player's characters would never pick up on, which is why it's not mindscaping. You break this illusion that they see the world through their own eyes, and it pulls them out of the world. And it's not theater. The theater meaning that you are putting up, but if the acting is like making using a certain voice to speak in character, the theater is trying to entertain your players, which I think it's okay wanting to entertain your players, but it's not the goal of a role-playing game, right? We talk in different videos about what role-playing is, about 4D roleplay. We talked about it multiple times on different channels. If you still have questions about that, I have a video last year where I talked about what 4D roleplay is. There's a video on Mr. Max 11's channel about 4D roleplay. He just released a new one a couple of weeks ago that can help you with that understanding. But I'm not here to perform and put on an act to entertain the players. I'm here with the mindscaping to unlock their ability to imagine where they are so that they can act. And yeah, you guys can ask any questions when they come up. I will try to go through them at the end of the video. Mindscaping is underappreciated. If roleplay is a core aspect of a role-playing game. It's funny to say, like, you watch some of the games and they do not look like core aspects, but they are. It's what makes this genre unique. What makes a role-playing game separate from other styles of games. Makes them separate from war games, it separates them from adventure games, from tabletop games. If you speak about role-playing game, the role play is the core aspect, but it's a different skill. It's a different muscle. We talk 4D role play. You say where you are, anchoring your character, say what you do, and speak with with what your character would say. It's a translatable skill across all role-playing game systems. That's why I think Mindscaping is so cool. It doesn't matter if you play Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun, the Dark Eye, or the new Shadow Dark system that is getting all the glories right now in the role-playing game circles, or if it's Warhammer 40k. Mindscaping is a skill you can use in every system. I mean, you can even use it outside of role-playing games. Mindscaping can very well be used for telling campfire stories, as far as I'm concerned. It's the same muscle. It's taking what you imagine in your mind's eye and describing it to your players. And this is why you think, right? So, okay, Mindscaping sounds cool and all that. And you have a game coming up next weekend, maybe. Let's imagine the scenario. You have this game coming up, and you're pretty excited about it. But, you know, you're trying out a new system, and you don't feel that comfortable with the system yet. You can spend time in getting better with the rules, or you can spend time in getting better at describing scenarios and painting pictures with your words. Now, one of those skills will be good for that one shot, for that short campaign. The other skill you can translate for that game and the next game and the game in a month, and draw from it in a year from now when you're at another table and think back of what were the cool moments from previous games. And it's the mindscaping of being able to describe the scenes to your players, and for the players to describe what they're doing to you that stick in your memory. It's more flexible than rules mastery. Now, I think rules mastery is important. It's a one, first of all, it's a sign of respect that you show the other players you value their time for sitting down with you, playing a game for multiple hours. And if you have to fumble to look up some rules, if it takes longer than 30 seconds, if it takes longer than a minute, then it can, you can get this feeling of, oh man, I wish I knew, I wish I've taken the time. But you can describe more events and scenes through mindscaping, through describing what is happening with your words, and don't have to know that much about rules, because how humans act, how situations occur, they stay pretty much similar, except for if it's, well, I cannot think of many scenarios where it's not useful. Maybe some particular magic systems call for rules because they are not intuitive, like magical interactions, because magic is treated as an otherworldly force that's not very well explained, that you need the rules to lean upon to help you demystify what is happening. Sure, but even then I think I'd rather have more I'd rather be more confident in my ability to bring through that mystery and keep it mysterious and fun to interact with instead of being locked down by a rule system. Are there any dangers with mindscaping? Dangers embodying the storyteller. Your players write their own story. Do not stand in their way. That's something that can happen when you focus. If you're a dungeon master, a game master, a table runner, you oftentimes you're the person who spends the most time, who has the most time invested. It doesn't have to be, but it can often happen, and it can happen very quickly. And because of that, you are the guy looking through the book, reading the rules, writing down notes, and you might say, hey, you know what? Let me come up with a story to tell my players. Now, those games, they often end up being a railroad, you know, because if you thought about it 4 hours throughout the week, while you're at work, before you go to bed, in the shower, you come up with ideas, you write them down, you ruminate on them. Now it's much harder to let go of them. It's almost like, on Monday it was an idea. At Friday night, you're practically married already. And when the players want to do something else, you have to divorce the idea. And then it becomes painful. Embodying the storyteller is a danger of mindscaping. You have a cool idea of how you imagine events to unfold. So you reach that climax, that moments where the Avengers team comes together in New York to fight off the alien invasion of, what was it, the Skitari? No, of the Krull, I think. Yes. They have come together, and you have it all mapped out in your mind very nicely. Except you cannot describe that scene unless your players put themselves in their shoes in that moment to recreate that scene. Now, as a storyteller, you want to push the players to dramatic moments and acts to create those tensions, like memorable moments, but it's not your story to tell. Now, you can still have the invasion happening, but the players decide how they act upon it. So it's important to recognize that and keep that separation in your game mastering style when you try to mindscape, when you try to run the table. And getting lost in the details is also a danger. Now, I see this a problem with role-playing friends of mine at my offline tables, players that I like a lot, and I've enjoyed for years playing with them. And I have to say, it still happens that it's no longer a joke anymore. I sit there after 10 years and hear them explain the scenario, stumbling over their own words to describe items of clothing, to describe the environment, just struggling how to use words to put that imagination, this vivid spectral image in their minds that is painting this beautiful world of a grimy Shadowrun scenario deep in Hamburg somewhere, in this mega city where danger lurks everywhere, where the streets are flooded by the ocean, by the North Sea, you know, and they cannot get it out of their mouth. They get, I guess it's a different point from getting lost in the details, but that's also a point of players and game masters. You want to tell them what you imagine because that's what got you excited to be at the table. At least that gets me excited. I hope it gets you excited as well. You have a vision and you want to share this vision. And no matter how much you try, it just will not come out right. It's a point of practice, a point of skill from earlier. That a muscle that needs to be exercised. Getting lost in the detail, however, is when you have this vision and you're spending 5 minutes describing the beautiful details of the city, of the enemies that are chasing the troop through the streets in their cars, and you end up describing this Mitsubishi Hyundai like hybrid, a mix of two different brands of like a, what's it called, a bike that's also an amphibious vehicle that can drive on the water, and you end up like name calling brands so that the players know what stat blocks they have, and you want to like keep painting the pictures more and more, and the players, when you see them pull out the phone at the table, you know you lost them. It's even when their eyes go wet, they like start staring through you, becoming all cross-eyed, sitting at the table waiting. They're just waiting for you to be finished. Like whatever goes in, it just comes out the other end. Like you had your chance the first 10 seconds, now the next 2 minutes is just noise, you know? It's a noise to signal ratio. Getting lost in the details. When you're mindscaping, keep it broad, keep it... It's very similar to drawing. Get the big paintbrush first. Paint a rough outline. You're in the Badlands. Jagged terrain. Very few bushes, mostly dried out and dead. The trees wilting and crooked. And the players get a moment to act. Let them have a round each. Let them anchor themselves where they are. It's one thing I did consciously in the Lich's Drags game, the first session. I've described the scene of an upturned tree, a sign of orc might, but also a place to show this is the border between known orcish lands and the wilderness of, you know, orcs don't go there unless they are hunting or killing or marauding or scouting. And I don't need to add all of those details. I just put a tree there as a, well, delineation. Where are the players? Now they have a focal point to focus around, to roleplay around, to speak around about their own plans, because it's still kind of up in the air. It was the first minute of the session. It's up in the air what they want to do, what their goals are. We predetermined that they wanted to go scouting, and that's how we set off the whole mini campaign. This free shot session, you know. But they could also just meet up there and decide to turn around and scheme in the village. And it's a good anchor point to focus around and learn more about the world. The more they interact with the world, the more I can reveal. Or, you know, I also have a bit more time to think up more details, which helps. So high what's it called? Low resolution to high resolution. Big picture first, the big paintbrush first. Going into the details when they come up, when they become relevant. All right. Let's see. Okay, this was the last part of my slide. That's all I've written down. So we can switch the camera again. There we go. I'm gonna check through what we have from our viewers here. I see Daryl Errett. Do you think people that struggle in that way are people who might not read often? Now, I think I'm definitely one of those guys who do not read often. Well, it's hard to define reading because a lot of people nowadays, they read Discord, they read Facebook, they read social media, but books, that many people, a lot of people, young people nowadays, don't read books. Or they've read one book like 5 years ago. I would count myself among them. I don't think it's limited to books. What books do is it's directly translatable to Mindscaping because, well, what does an author do? His whole job is imagining a beautiful, interesting, exciting world and putting it into words, written down on paper, handing it to some stranger like 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future, or the next day. He cannot even have control at what time they consume their book. He just has to write it in a way that's compelling and lasts through the ages. So if you read books, you can learn so much more about how to describe your words to your players, or by reading the books themselves of what activates your imagination, right? What turns your noggin, so to say. So I will say it helps for sure. But nowadays we have like infinite access to movies and to video games, which I would say like even 20 years ago, going to a movie was like a deal. Maybe you do it once a month, right? And watching TV shows was possible in the evenings sometimes. But I'm trying to think. There wasn't much option and much less high quality options. But it's become more and more available, especially nowadays. So if you're not reading books, but you play video games, you can learn a lot. To make it translate into Mindscaping, what happens is you still fill up your library in your head, right? Of your imagination through experiencing those games and watching those movies. And you draw from those instead. That's what genre love to do, is talking about with other players, with other people, what movies they watched. And taking scenes from the movies and putting those into his games, like a direct translation. I often use references from Warcraft in my D&D games. It's not conscious. It's just the most present source of what I think of medieval fantasy, of like an exciting world filled with magics and monsters. So that's where a lot of my source is drawn from. All right, my best players at description were always avid readers of fiction. Yeah, that makes complete sense for me, Daryl. You read a lot. It's like a direct translation. If something was really exciting, I can imagine they can probably just quote the book outright of how the scene was described. It's like a block text from an adventure path, except the writer, is more has more self-respect. Sometimes with now I would love to know Flame Zombie's point on this. Well, I venture to guess that he agrees with me that writers from adventure paths work more like mercenaries. So when they write down a block text of what a place looks like, it's like just part of the job to get a description going. But if it's inside of a book by a writer, the writer wants to sell the book because he has like a lot of control over the book. It's his intellectual property. Hopefully, at least, like most of the time. I hope so. So you want to create the best possible product and really evoke a vivid imagination. But if you're more of a freelancer hired to finish a job as part of a team, to write an adventure path, those blog texts can get pretty drab, boring, or just outright not in line with what the characters would say. I've had this problem when I was drawing from the Sword Coast's Adventures Guide, which is a D&D book. All it does is describe customs and cities of the Sword Coast. And I used that to describe a city, and I realized what was written down is not what my players would see, because they arrived by boat instead of going through the gates. So I had to take what's written down, imagine it, and reconstruct of how I would describe the scene, making it like not very useful, but it was more useful as like an inspiration point than a blog text, so to say. All right. Daryl Errett again. As a game master, I find lots of inspiration from movies and TV shows, but seeing words on a page has helped me learn how to use words. Yes, definitely agree. Definitely. Now, I like, sometimes I like watching role-playing games because it's this one field that I find the role-playing game shows do well, right? We're talking about the big ones, is they spend a lot of time prepping how to describe a scene, because a lot of shows are set up like railroads. The players don't have much freedom. They're waiting to get cued by the game master when it's their turn again. Sometimes they quip back and forth, but there's not much role-playing happening. And if they roleplay, then it gets interrupted by bad jokes, or asking how the rules work, or asking 20 questions if they, like Mother May I questions. Can I do this? Can I go to the toilet? Can I ask the guard for directions? Can I open the door? It's like the most mind-numbing questions you can think of. But the things they do well because they think about the game like having a show. They put a lot more time into how to describe scenes. And I watch those and I think, can I just steal that? Can I just take how he describes scenes and take it for myself? It's one of the skills I'm impressed with by Esper the Bard. He has a YouTube channel. I watched his Gauntlet Runner videos and did a critique on that. He is exceptionally good at describing the scenery without like going too far or taking up too much time. And that I find very impressive. He's also good at doing creature voices, but that's a separate topic. But he stumbled over the other parts of moving the players and telling them what they should do instead of just letting them act. Yeah, that was I went a bit vicious on those on that critique. Yeah, not gonna lie. All right. Yeah, it looks like that's all the questions we have. So now, what I'm gonna do is look at some pictures, right? And I'm going to practice the Mindscaping because it's a library. It helps if you take some time to look up something that's inspiring. It's very close to the process of artists, like how to come up with an image to draw. You have to draw inspiration from somewhere. Draw it from real life first, because then it's unfiltered, it's unaltered, and it's like clean, you know? If you take an image of a drawing of somebody having drawn something that they've drawn from a drawing, you get it watered down pretty fast, and it's very hard to create those skills. But for Mindscaping, I think that's not that much of a problem. So let's see if we can do that. I hope this works out. So I'm gonna do around 5 to 10 exercises, like 10-15 minutes, just to see how it feels. And I want to encourage you guys at home, if you think about, oh man, you want to do some prep, you have a game coming up, what do you really put some time and effort in? Ask yourself, how quick are you at describing the location to your players without losing their attention? I'm I think I'm pretty bad at it, by the way. Like if you watch my games, I'm not like a grand wizard at those. Let's click the first image. Now, what do we describe here, boys? On the cliff's edge, atop of mountains, up in the highlands, a dead tree standing tall, a good 3 stories, with its branches pointing in all directions. An ibex ram with proud horns looking away and eating some of the grasses as the rocky, precarious terrain covered by moss is covered by moss. A couple of pine trees spread around, with a view over the mountain ranges that peek through the cloudy sea, engulfing everything in the valley. Now that was a bit, that was a mouthful. I think I've started adding some details. I think I could do the same by like getting the big picture in first. I feel like the big picture would be, you do not see the valley, right? You have reached a mountaintop. You see the ibex ram. I think the tree is a vocal point for the characters to orient around. Seeing the mountain ranges in the distance, I think, is a smaller detail that doesn't need to be mentioned. All right. Now I typed in environment in Art Studio just to see what comes up. Traveling through the forest, you come across the fallen ruins of old forgotten road with marble pillars standing tall and proud, cracked, the stone being cracked, some vases standing with flowers growing in all directions, as nature has taken over this spot of lost civilization, leading down further into the valley. I think we can keep this one pretty vague. I think about the players are going downhill, so giving a sense of direction, uphill, downhill. The stone columns, the marble, like saying a specific stone if you can. But I could have just said like limestone or granite, but it's better if you have limestone, granite, marble in your mind instead of thinking stone, stone, stone. Like, okay, what is stone? What is tree? Everything is a tree. Everything is a stone. I didn't mention the pink blossoms. I feel like the pink blossoms would be a great contrast for the players. I feel like I missed out here because it would help the players remember. All right, let's fall back to the broken road with the pink blossom tree, and everybody will know what they meant. But if they just say, let's fall back to the broken road, they might get confused, like, well, a long stretch of the road was broken. So which point did you mean? All right. Approaching the summit of the cliff, a bare tree reaches towards the sky and over the precipice. Clouds are scattered both below and above you, concealing much of the mountain ridge far away. I like that. That's a very good description. It was less than 15 seconds. Your players are still looking you in the eye, or looking up in the sky because they're trying to imagine it for themselves. The canopy of shadows dances across the floor, the ruined pillars and stones you walk across. The gentle leaves of the tree nearest you stand in stark contrast to the greens of other vegetations. Yeah, I like that. Now, this is very much like both like a creative exercise as well as almost like a writing exercise. But if you do some of those, you can just think about it like, oh, did that sound good? Did it get the point across? Do I think my players are still paying attention? Now imagine you describe the scene to the players. You're at the table. You are under pressure, right? It's time to, I might get made fun of, but it's time to perform. You put yourself in the shoes of the game master here to describe a world for the players to imagine. Now, I'm gonna say the players should do the same thing. That's the benefit of 4D roleplay. They have the same freedom to describe the world. But we just not take it down a notch that they describe it reasonably with what they already know from the world of information they can infer, right? Keep it reasonable. The Dark of Maya. Pretty good, cause I'm looking away until you're done. Just missing lighting. Oh, yes, that's a cool exercise. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna pull out the next picture. Okay, this picture's moving. Let me pause real quick. Over frozen ice sheets, a big base, almost the shape of a submarine, standing out in stark contrast as bridges like webs connect the industrial city with a brutalist architecture to smaller outposts build atop the ice. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Now, how do I feel about this? I think brutalist architecture brings strong emotions. Now, the players, they might be confused, like, what is that? you you just kind of run the risk that sometimes the players don't know, because they might have never heard, they might just not know much about architecture, what it looks like. But for me, it's like, oh yes, anything made out of beton, it's like, what's the English word? You guys probably know the English word. Of just a cold, uncaring gray stone where the buildings are created from. And it's a beautiful image. Now, this is a super cool setting that I would have loved to have. Being able, like, I wish I could have this in the Biotrauma game I played last year as a base of operations, like an island outpost situation. Okay. Gonna see if this one struck my eye. Let's see if we can describe this. Okay, the first thing I'm doing is imagining how the players have approached this place. Following the dirt path, you find yourself at an idyllic building, a house built into a stone outcrop, reaching through and over the house. The house itself built underneath it and into the stone, synergistically, as its playful shingles curve upwards, looking to be able to house a family, clothes hanging outside, drying in the spring breeze. I feel like I stumbled over my words in this one on how to describe this formation, because I never saw a house built around stone like that. So how do you describe that? Now, this one is difficult for me because it's not natural. Like, this is obviously fantastical. It's whimsical almost. Like, it makes no structural sense. If you build a house like that, almost like you would have the rain come down, but because you built into the stone, the rain would like drip alongside the stone into the house unless you're really good at sealing up along the way. So I feel like it would throw up more questions than answers. So this would be a case that I would just take the image and throw it up on screen for the players as I do my description, but I show the image to help them along. Like, oh, yes, now I can imagine where we are. Your footsteps crunch loudly as you are presented with a monolithic structure of iron with towers and metal walkways. The distance fades all detail of light. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Now, I would say that stuff like your footsteps crunch loudly, part of when we describe things for role playing is trying not to invade the player's autonomy. So yeah, I mean, they're moving. If they're moving, it's okay. But we try not to move them under loud crunching footsteps. It's like you are presented. Yeah, I feel like it's okay. It's this point of like you. I'm trying to reduce how much I say you as much as possible. because the danger is of slipping into controlling the players and moving the party, which is undesirable. Why is it undesirable? Well, that is taught when we talk about for the roleplay. I hope you will go back to some of the earlier episodes. I have a playlist of every time I've shown up on a role-playing talk show. You can check that out and see if any of those strike your fancy. But I have seen you more I've seen you regularly, Daryl Errett, so I'm sure you understand. This is more for future viewers that might come back to this place. Oh, there we go. All right. So the players already know we are in the cyberpunk world, but let's describe this. In the mega city, by the 4-lane streets, a woman waits sitting on her motorcycle, wearing coverall blue motorcycle outfit and striking red helmet that goes with the colors of the motorcycle, also clad in red. Wheels, the old-timey wheels replaced with modern metal balls. Now I have this pause because I'm thinking of, man, do I add anything? Yes, I should have. The rain splattering off the visor of her helmet. Because I feel like the rain would also be an effect. But if we are at the table, I would keep that to myself and give all the players a turn first. And then I mention the rain as the rain pouring onto the streets. Daryl Errett, I definitely don't control players. But if they walked to where they stood, it's probably safe. I agree. I would maybe add their steamy breath, assuming they weren't undead players. I think it's okay. It's something, yeah, it's something I would do. It's like, they have bodily autonomy, but if they're breathing, the steam rises from you, steam rising from your breath, to really showcase how cold it is, or frostbites forming on the edges of your mustache and beard. Hum and vibrations of the engine. Yes, that's a good way to showcase, like, oh yeah, like actually it would also showcase that the machine is active, and it can translate to she's waiting to pick you up, maybe. Like, it's inferring information that the players can pick up and run with. Now we are in the, I would assume, Middle East. This is actually Counter-Strike map. Now, I would never say that at the table, because making a reference to a video game, now everybody's thinking about Counter-Strike, so I lost them already. Old, worn down streets and buildings of last century. The yellow brickwork of intertwined buildings. The road splitting, going uphill and splitting down a pathway in a cross section. going under a tunnel which has a gate currently opened. Construction materials lining the streets, waiting to be used for years by now. Okay. I feel like I'm happy with mentioning the coloration. Now, if that would happen again, and I'm thinking about my players, like we are playing in a modern setting, but maybe it's a paramilitary setting, and that's I'm leaning into that counter-insurgency group type campaign with violence and close quarters combat, tactical team play. That's where my head is going. It could also just be like the premise of that's where the bazaar is set up, they're just right around the corner. But like, how would I describe this? Like bleached stone. That's a word I remember from listening to movies and reading books. Like, yeah, the stone is bleached by the sun because it's so hot outside. It's all yellow and almost white. And I wish I knew how to describe those Middle Eastern buildings. We can see the domes, like some houses being domed for a roof, and being able to represent that architecture in the world, because I'm trying not to say Middle Eastern style buildings. That feels clunky. Now, if that's the only word that comes up, it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. And if you and the players are not too fussed about 4D, they might say so, like they might jump in like a Sultanate type deal, but old and run down. It's like, yeah, like that style, but in smaller scale, not part of a kingdom, modernized. That can help. Daryl. That's exactly what I thought before you said Counter-Strike. Yes. Okay, doing a couple more, trying to get some different. Okay. Now, let's see what we can do. The dirt road, the dirt cart road, leads through the village of these East Asian buildings with bamboo doors and the white papery doors that slide sideways as people wearing masks sell their furs, clothing, vegetables, and rice on the side, keeping their buckets closed with a lid on to keep the rain outside and their goods fresh. A man playing a flute with a dog passing the group as taking a stroll. Red lanterns hanging between the buildings across the street. On this gray, cloudy, and moist day. A bridge spanning in the distance from in the horizon, a good 100 to 100 meters in the distance. Knowledge of architecture terms is a plus. I remember as a young reader having to look up a lot of architecture terms in my fantasy reading. Yeah, I agree. That is a skill that like you describe it often enough and you realize like, oh wow, how do I describe this, right? And then you can look it up and you can in uh then you can put pictures to words. And if you run into that often enough, then just think, hey, would my players know what that looks like if I told them the term of the architecture? Probably not. You know, you have to meet your players where they are. Like, I mean, first of all, you invited them to the table. So you already decided what level of ignorance you're okay with. Like, how well versed are they? Like, are they good role players? Are they your friends? Have they a vivid imagination? Do you just like the way they play? You know, you have a bunch of reasons, but then when it comes to describing scenes, like maybe I just pull up an image when I describe like the first town. So then everybody can abbreviate that towns have the style of this Eastern marketplace of like created out of bamboo and wood shingles and stuff like that. River Run of Skyrim question mark. Uh I don't I don't know what that was referring to. I'm a bit lost there. A large Scottish wolfhound barking. Yeah, there could be a large Scottish wolfhound. Not in this picture though, like not that I can see. Okay. I think that's those were some good examples. We're gonna leave it at that. So let's switch over. Yeah. And with that concludes the practice. I hope this was helpful for you guys. How I hope I was able to convey why I think mindscaping is important, what makes it different from theater play and storytelling, which I think is why it gets put into the same box so often when people talk about role playing games, about trying to be agreeable to everything but standing for nothing. But you want to have a strong stance, but you don't want to upset your friends. It's like, well, what are we doing here? Are we just saying that it's okay to say mindscaping is not important as long as everybody's having fun? It's like on the same level as role playing, a skill that gets so easily disregarded because, oh, right, it's a role playing game. We just roll dice over here. And when I think about what I want to do in a role playing game, that cannot be further from the truth. And I want to be able to paint the picture, but am at a loss of words. So if you want to prep anything, prep the skills that last you for every game, right? Allow yourself. I mean, that's how I approach it. It's just like whatever I can do to calm my nerves helps me because now I can draw from my memory. And if I'm nervous and am at a loss of words, then doesn't really matter much what we play. It's just gonna be more awkward in everything I do. How would you define mindscaping? Yeah, we defined it at the start, so luckily you can go back to the start. It's gonna be my cop out answer. It's been an hour, 10 minutes. So I do thank you for watching. I yeah, yes, I'm not gonna repeat myself at this point. Luckily it's all recorded and on YouTube. And yeah, this is we are in the final minutes, so just gonna a little bit about myself. I wanted to talk about more role-playing stuff on my YouTube channel for a while. And I just like always found a reason not to do it. Like, I'm too tired. I want to watch this show. I have a game coming up today. I have to do my fitness routine, and it's just like excuses kept popping up. So today I decided I'm gonna throw down the gauntlets and do it in an hour. And I wrote down what was still on my mind. But now that it's out there, I do hope that people will push back on it so that I can further refine the idea. And, at the very least, people can teach me something. And at best, that I help people. But especially with the practical application of Mindscaping, of the practice we've done at the end, to help uh, showcase what I mean and how to implement it, right? To describe the surroundings of where the players are so that you share your imagination with them. Because the question that I placed at the start, it's in the video title, if you are not sharing if you're not telling what you imagine, did it ever happen? If a tree falls and nobody's there to hear it, did it ever happen? I find it's a sad solace people and players take, that they just think, oh, in my head I had this cool vision and that's good enough for me. And I cannot think of anything more depressing than that, because you had 3 other players at the table and a game master, and you wanted just a moment to describe a cool scene with your character. And your game master wanted an adventure to run and a story to tell and cut you off. So, yeah. Yeah, that last point, it's not just a game master skill, a table runner skill, it's also a player skill. Being allowed that leg room to share, to paint that picture with your words and share it with the other players. All right, good subject. Best regards. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you very much for being an active commenter. It makes it a lot more easier to do this. All right, this is Onalar, and enjoy your evening, guys. Goodbye.